on today's episode of DCU Daily, I want to talk about why there's so many DC films that have been flopping of late. And yes, we can talk about the recent ones. Like, let me go over the recent movies that have flopped. I'm sure you have seen these. The Flash, or you haven't seen these, but you've probably heard that they're flopped. The reason why they're flopped is because you probably haven't seen these. The Flash, Shazam 2, Shazam Fury of the Gods, and Black Adam are the three most recent examples of movies from DC, and all three in a row. And not only have they just flopped, they have flopped big time. Like Shazam 2 made less than $150 million. That's like the lowest gross. I mean, that's even worse than Morbius, I bet you. It had $125 million budget.
Yeah,
I'm sure they spent like another 50 to 100 on marketing. And the fact that they made less than 150, not just domestic US, around the world. It's the worst flop I can think of in terms of any superhero genre movie in recent memory or ever. And that's just Shazam 2. Then you have Black Adam. Black Adam was made for like $250 million, and then it made like less than $400 million at the box office. That's with The Rock, the biggest movie star in the world, or one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and it didn't even make $500 million. Let me just give you a comparison for a second. The MCU is by no means in a good place right now, but Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which a lot of people will consider it one of the worst Marvel movies in recent memory, and really underwhelming in a lot of ways, and some people just outright hated it. Even that movie made like 476 or like just around 500 million. Even that movie, Ant-Man, and then Black Adam with The Rock couldn't make 400 million. I mean, what the hell is wrong? And then of course now we have The Flash playing in movie theaters. And it's a movie with all the controversy around Ezra Miller. I mean, despite all that, Tom Cruise gave his recommendation. You had people like Steven Spielberg. You had all these big elite people talking about. Yeah, Tom Cruise was like, he loved it so much. He talked to David Zaslav about it. David Zaslav was like, I'll send you your personal copy to view at your house. So they had a studio rep go out to his house in LA, stay there while Tom Cruise watched the movie, then take the copy back with him or her to the studio lot, and then Tom Cruise was so happy about his experience with the movie. All this was in the news.
Yeah, I wonder how much they paid him.
I don't know. I mean, but then he called Andy Muschietti, the director, to say how much he liked the movie. And then they went to CinemaCon with it. They were like, "This is the greatest movie." So David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Bros. Discovery, was like, "This is the greatest superhero movie I've ever seen." James Gunn, the new DC studio heads, was like, "This is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time." I mean, now look, it's not.
Well, yeah,
it's also not terrible, but it's not gonna make even 500 million, and they spent like 300 million on the movie, and then marketing is sitting at 250 million after a month at the box office.
We talked about this, that they did have to postpone it a few times.
They did. I mean, that movie has been in development technically for almost 2 decades, and certainly the current version for like almost a decade.
That's probably where some of the budget went. And also the superhero fatigue. That's something that one of the articles in the direct talks about. There's just too much. And
there is a lot.
To be fair,
but it's also because they're mediocre.
Also, if you hear there is a Marvel movie coming out, or there is a DC movie coming out, of course people are going to see Marvel because it just had better movies in total.
Track record. Like, remember how I mentioned Ant-Man? I'm like, people in general trust the Marvel brand more right now than the DC brand. And that's just, I mean, it's a recency bias probably because in the last 10 to 15 years, Marvel has put out way better movies than DC has on average. There's been some great DC movies. There's been some great Marvel movies, but on average, the bar is higher for Marvel. So even for a movie like Ant-Man that a lot of people didn't enjoy, still a lot more of them went to see it than the DC movies that have come around at the same time. Now, the second point that I wanted to make here is that I mentioned these numbers earlier, right? Like, they spent 250 plus million on Black Adam. They spent 125 on Shazam Fury of the Gods, which is not terrible. I mean, that's about par for the course, but still, for the amount of money it made, that's a lot. And then for Flash, because of all the development costs for all of those years that they were working on the movie, as well as everything else that went into like marketing it and all that, that movie cost them like over 300 million. Now, Warner Brothers is going to probably end up losing a couple of $100 million at the end of the day, all these movies combined. But these budgets are bloated. They're spending way too much money, not only in making them, but then they have to market them. I'm like, why are you spending this much? What justified Shazam's to even exist? The first movie, well reviewed, but didn't even make like 350 million, I don't think. It definitely made less than 400 million. I don't think they should have spent even 125 million on the second one. They should have spent 100 million or less.
Just to test it out.
Why are these CGI spectacles? Why was Black Adam the first movie of a character that most people in the mainstream don't even know? Even if it was The Rock as the Black Adam in the movie,
they relied on the cast.
250 million.
They wanted the Fast and Furious crowd and stuff.
Yeah, but like still, like I just, there's bloated budgets here.
Not Fast and Furious. Sorry, Chris Rock was he in that?
Yeah, I mean he's in the Rock. He's actually just returned to the franchise. He's back.
Right.
But like, look, their bloated budget issue is a Hollywood-wide problem that we have to solve. A lot of studios are spending way too much money on movies that aren't making nearly enough. They need to reel in their budgets. But right now, the DC movies and Warner Brothers Discovery are taking some of the most high-profile hits with these bloated budget movies that are flopping on their face. And the other thing that I think that hurts them is not only the bloated budgets, it's the fact that there's not a lot of connective tissue between these. Flash was the only movie out of those three where I really felt like it was part of a bigger universe, because you had some of those cameos. You had Wonder Woman, you had Ben Affleck's Batman, and you got a little bit of a sneak peek at Henry Cavill's Superman, but not probably him, but an animated version of him on a news story clip, but whatever. It felt like the universe of the DCU was alive in that movie, whereas in these other ones, it just feels like they're sort of these little pocket adventures. Movie. And then look, the big reason why the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been so successful, while sometimes to its detriment, it feels too connected, and it feels like you're watching one episode of a TV show after another while you're watching a movie. A lot of the reasons why each movie is so successful is because people go to the next movie because they're like, well, the last 10 were really good, and then this is going to connect probably to the next one after, so I need to go see it to keep up. And so that water cooler effect that you have, you just don't get that with these DC movies. They feel disjointed, disconnected. They don't visually add up quite as well. Like, they don't look like they all exist in the same universe.
With things like Morbius and Black Adam, that if you haven't told me, I would have assumed it's a Marvel movie. Like, there's no way to tell that.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the other thing. So this is the last point I'm going to make. Look, not only are these movies, not connected all that well, they have bloated budgets, they have kind of like, a lot of them have mediocre basic stories. They're not particularly inspiring. And they've had bad VFX. Like, and you could call it creative decisions and like blah, 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 whatever. But then the biggest thing I think they've got here is all three of the, okay, look, the Flash is, a lot of people know who the Flash is. That's technically an A-list character. A lot of people know, oh, he's the fastest superhero. Like, he's the most well-known version of a superhero who runs really fast. Like, more people know about him than Quicksilver, the Marvel equivalent of the Flash. But Shazam, Black Adam, and even now we got Blue Beetle coming out, and even to a lesser extent Aquaman, these are all characters that are not as mainstream as a Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman. The last Superman movie that we got, the last solo Superman movie, was in 2013. The last time we saw Henry Cavill actually don the suit, other than a cameo or reusing old footage, was in 2017's Justice League. The last time we got a Ben Affleck movie where it was truly like, without coming back for cameos or doing reshoots, where he was in a proper one, was the 2017 Justice League.
Yeah, that's whole thing with cameos as well. I think they really rely on the cameos, but they're not big enough. They're not... It has been done before. It's not a unique kind of marketing point. Like, I'm not going to go... like, you told me that there was, I don't know, spoiler alert for whoever hasn't seen it, but there was a Michael Keaton in the newest Shazam.
No, Michael Keaton was in the Flash. I mean, it's not a spoiler. He's in the trailers. He's actually a pretty big part of the movie.
Yeah, fair enough. But
even that, like, it's like it was their version of No Way Home.
Yeah, I wouldn't go and see it. I would still probably wait for the release and happen to watch it with someone, but I think DC probably
was maybe a year or two too late to the trend of
cameos
doing the multiverse movie that like No Way Home was, or like Spider-Verse did it, but they did it well. I think, those movies have been fantastic.
So
They stand out. Whereas what I'm seeing with like the Flash, the other thing about the Flash, by the way, is the bad VFX. Like, look, you can say the VFX were creative decisions as to how everything looked in the Speed Force, and most people were making fun of like, oh, that looks bad. It looks unfinished. Here's the thing: if they wanted it to look not photoreal, they should have gone really a lot further to make it look more goofy and less photoreal. They sort of ended up in this uncanny valley with a lot of stuff where you get these memes of, oh, look, there's that Henry Cavill Superman. That's the animated, like they didn't even get him back for it. This is just some animated version that they created. It doesn't even look like him. Or like, I think they just made some bad creative decisions. Also, I'll be honest with you, like, yes, it wasn't the most ideal thing ever. However, Zack Snyder's color palette, and then even when you saw something that he didn't direct, like the first Wonder Woman movie and the first Suicide Squad movie, they all felt like they visually belonged in the same continuity as those other Zack Snyder DC movies that started off the DCEU. Whereas the recent ones, even one that was very successful, $1 billion, the highest grossing movie of the DCU, Aquaman,
they don't match. They stand out.
They visually don't look like they belong together. Whereas you look at any Marvel MCU project, even whether it's the Guardians of the Galaxy and they're like on the other end of the galaxy, or you watch Secret Invasion where they're on Earth, they look like they belong in the same universe. They have a visual shorthand that matches, and I think that kind of puts people more at ease because they know that's something familiar that they can expect from it. There's a certain level of comfort that you get, even if the story isn't great. And all of those are reasons why I think DC films are flopping. I really hope that Blue Beetle doesn't flop, and I do want the Aquaman 2 to succeed.
It doesn't look that great.
But I mean, look, I've been reading articles and they're saying analysts have absolutely no reason to believe that either of those movies are going to do well. But I mean, I'm hoping for the best. Are you going to go see either of those?
No. If it was a Marvel movie, sure, I'm there. But DC, it's hard. Okay, there has to be something as unexpected as Everything Everywhere All at Once for me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to give it a go. For me to actually go, okay, it has to have Tom Cruise. If Tom Cruise is going to somewhat join the DC universe, then I'll be there. And but yeah, it sounds like a lot of money has been wasted.